Hello, everyone. JC Coffee with 411 Business. And today we have the amazing Julian Green. Hi, Julian.
Hi there, JC.
I'm so honored to have you. You are so amazing,
Oh, that's kind of you.
especially after we talked earlier.
Yes. Uh, as you know, I'm no technophile, so that was difficult.
You did so great. I love it. It was phenomenal.
So, what would you like to talk about?
Just your insight on whatever you want to talk about today. This is your day.
Oh, you mean I can talk about whatever I like,
Whatever
but
you want to
but
talk
not
about.
UFOs, you said, not UFOs.
Well, we can talk about UFOs, but I'm not that well versed on them.
Well, let me just say about them. If people are sitting around waiting for somebody to drop from the sky and rescue them, it's not going to happen. Uh, uh, It simply isn't, right? That's not the way the universe works. But from a more economic point of view, the world is certainly in trouble economically, and it is going to get a lot worse. You cannot go on spiraling bigger and better and more indefinitely. It has to come to a stop somewhere. The Dow can't keep going up forever. Business can't keep expanding forever. And for us in America, ever since World War II, we've had this problem that our military and industrial complex, as President Eisenhower warned us when he was leaving office, is a great danger to the United States. And what's happened in the last 70 years is that we've become a corporation as a nation, that everything is about the big corporations, the big car companies, the Exxons, these kinds of organizations which have no loyalty to a country. They're multinational, and as they should be, because they're for profit, they're to make money for people. That's their business. And so if they can get it for $1 a day as opposed to $20 an hour, they're going to take that opportunity. And the result of that, in a larger way, is that all our production, all the wonderful things that America made after World War II, we were the great industrial nation, and everybody got a chance at having everything if they came to America, right? Then that's all gone away because all those production things have now gone to other countries. And the things that are for us are cheap labor are coming into the country from like the Japanese cars that are being made here. And so the profits are going back to Japan. The profits are not coming to us. Now there's a difficulty here in America, which I learned when I was living overseas, that you have double taxation, right? That if you're an American, you get the IRS on your tail here every year if you're not careful. And the other side is that if you are working and making money overseas, the IRS is also taxing you for what you earn overseas. A lot of people don't realize that. That's why when you do work overseas, you don't see many Americans. They're mostly English and Scots and Europeans who do all the overseas work as contractors of one sort and another. So this is bad news. The IRS is bad news all round for America. It really holds things back, and it is largely since World War II, we have seen the complete loss of the middle class, of the ideas people who create work, who create businesses. I came obviously from England, and I was in my 40s when I came here. And I'd previously lived and worked doing volunteer nursing in Indonesia for, well, about 3 or 4 years. And then I was back there as an administrator for the West German Development Bank, doing development work along with AID, the American funding, because a lot of money was going into Indonesia at that time. And so I saw it from the lowest end. And then I came to America. And one of the first things I remembered here, I was living in Michigan, and there was a disaster, a minor disaster in Ohio. And they'd had a huge water main burst, and they were trucking in water for the local people. And they were lining up, and the news people were there, obviously. And the people in line were complaining that they were having to line up for water, that they were having to go to this truck and get the clean water. Well, I'd lived for 10 years without clean water. I'd lived without running water for 10 years, right? I got it out of a water barrel that had little red worms in it. So, it's like, what are they complaining about? They're getting clean water delivered to their door just because they've had a water main break, and it's going to be fixed in 2 or 3 days. And at the same time, there was a whole group of people protesting outside a grocery store because tomatoes were $2 a pound, right? $2 a pound for big red tomatoes. The people in Indonesia who are growing the tomatoes are sweating themselves to a standstill in 96-degree heat for 50 cents or $1 a day, right? So it was a real culture shock for me to come from Indonesia after being there for almost 10 years, right to America, because I'd married an American who I met over there, right to America, and find this huge, there's no relevance between the poor in this world, in the third world countries, and those who complain all the time that they don't have enough in America. And I came to the conclusion that for the average American, there is never enough. They want more. They want more money. They want more pay. They want more constantly, more. Well, if you get more, and they do, right? They get pay rises and things. If you get more, then the price of what you're buying is going to keep going up.
Yep.
But where we are now is that we've seen over a 40% rise in essential foods. And we've seen an actual drop in the value of the money that people are earning ever since COVID, right? And so
Yes.
COVID was a real wrecking ball, as far as I'm aware, for the economy of the United States. I mean, it was not only a real thing, because I don't think it was a real pandemic. I've seen epidemics of cholera, typhoid, you name it, right? All the stuff we did with typhoid was really with COVID was really not valid. I don't think it was valid. In my personal opinion, was that Mr. Fauci was some kind of crook, right? Just
We won't
interested.
talk about that on here.
Because
No ban.
I never liked that man from the first time I saw him, and I really think, for a fact, as a clairvoyant, I know that he was developing the COVID bacterium. They were actually splicing it and putting in a lot of bad stuff, and he was doing it in conjunction with the laboratory in Beijing that we were actually funding. That all the money for that laboratory in Beijing, where they said it escaped from, the Americans were actually funding that. It was our money, our taxpayer money, that was going into it. So economically, I think things are in a bad shape right now, and I also think over the next 6 months or so, we're going to have a kind of 2008 type crisis again, economically, where things are going to get worse. And then, of course, as a global matters, from a clairvoyant point of view, we are going to see more difficulties, more wars, more everything going on. And it is in the pattern of the planet that the next global war would break out in the Middle East. And of course, we're seeing something of that now with Israel and Palestine and the things that are going on there. And this is going to be another wrecking ball hitting our economy. I don't think that we are anywhere near as bad as it's going to get for your average American family. And that's why I would wish everybody, and I've been saying this for a long time, but it's been a long time coming. Well, I think we're here now. And I just wish that whatever situation economically people were in, they would start at least to put in some food reserves, some water reserves, make sure they've got a clean water supply. You know, things like go out and buy yourself a Berkey. It's going to cost around $300, and you might be able to pick one up secondhand. Or, but if you can't get a Berkey water filter, get something similar, not anything that's to do with power, just a filter thing, but a good one, because then you can have clean water. You need to be buying food whenever you see food on sale, dry goods especially. Buy them, put them away, store them, make yourself a reserve. And somebody once said to me, "Well, I've got about 3 months food reserves in. Will that be okay?" I'm talking about 3 years food reserves, because it
Absolutely.
takes 3 years to get a crop. You know, you dig up your front yard, you plant something. It's 3 years before you actually get an edible crop out of it where it's going to do you any good. So people really need to be thinking about these reserves and actually doing it. Um,
Yes. Not just thinking, doing. That's the one
Good.
thing. I mean, I grew up Mormon, and that's the one thing that that they were very adamant over and over and over and over again, is to make sure that you have a minimum of 2 years food supply, 2 years of water per person.
Yes, exactly, per person. It's no good having it for one member of the family and the rest have to starve, right? Because we can be very quickly find ourselves in that situation, particularly, and this makes it even harder if you live in a city,
Yes.
because the people out in the country, they can survive one way or another. Rural people will survive. It's
Yes.
like I have a bank account over in a little place called Twin Bridges in Montana, where I used to live. And the bank manager was a friend of mine. And I used to say to him, I never worry about having money, because if the money crashes, you've got lots of cows. You've got his family were ranchers, We're none of us in the village going to starve. But then
Mhm.
there were only 300 or 400 people lived in the village. We all put our little bit of money in the same family bank, right? And they had a ranch and had thousands of cows. So that whole little community was going to survive. And this is what people need to be thinking about, is thinking in terms of community. Who do they know? Who thinks like them? Who do they have among their friends who will be supportive of them? Because if we don't support one another in small manageable groups, with plenty of stored food and supplies, we're not going to get what's coming down. We're not going to get through it. I would. It's very possible that in a couple of generations, we could be almost back to the Stone Age, because it's highly probable we will lose all the electronics. That's the first thing that will go.
I mean,
Completely.
I'll tell you that is so accurate. In our family, it's been a big thing, and for me personally, having such a large family, raising 14 children, birthing seven, we have always looked at creating compounds. And that is a big thing for me. I've been working on that for 3 years extensively, because when it happens, it's too late.
Yes,
And I'm
exactly.
so blessed that my parents, they have land they live in a small little rural town, but the community that they live in, the people are so loving and so kind and so nurturing. I'm here actually visiting right now, and they will sustain because they work together.
Yes,
They go over and pick this person up and take them to the doctor. They farm at this person's house. This person brings this person vegetables. It is a community of unity, real, not talking. And
right.
that's what we really need to focus on. Is a lot of people give mouth service. Now is the time. Go plant a garden. I don't care if it works or not. Just if you start now, you can work out the bugs before it's too late.
Yeah.
Once it happens, we're on survival mode.
Yes. Yes, a penny in advance is worth two pennies afterwards when it's too late. You need,
Absolutely.
it needs to be done. People should have been doing it for years. I've been telling them, get away from the coasts. I want to say that you really need to be at least 150 miles inland. You need to be 1,200 feet above sea level for sure if you're going to stay dry. Otherwise, you're jolly well going to get wet. And the coastal areas, they might be beautiful and they might be lovely. I certainly li- lived on the coast. I grew up next to the sea and I really love it. So for me, it's natural to want to be next to the ocean. But I know that if you are near the ocean, you're likely to get caught up in a tsunami, in some kind of disaster, which is going to be catastrophic for you and your family. Excuse me, you know who this is. It's our friend, Russ. And
Oh, our angel.
I need to try and mute him, or I don't know how to do that. That's the best I can do. Just turn him off. Just turn him off, right? He'll get the message. Sorry, don't want to talk. You know, it's a tragedy that's coming, and we are getting, along with all this economic problems that we're building up to, we're also getting more and more of the geophysical. The socioeconomic and geophysical changes are all coming. And the geophysical ones, which are bringing more earthquakes, tornadoes, hurricanes, you name it, they are going to keep getting more and more and more severe. Uh, Japan, for instance, was told many, many years ago, that's all going to fall into sinkholes. And there will be nowhere for the Japanese to live anymore. So they will make war on the Philippines and take over the Philippines as their new homeland because they won't have anywhere to go. The Chinese are going to move in every direction, and it's hard for people to understand because they're always worried about, oh, we could have a war with China. We'll never go to war with China. We do not need. Why would China waste its resources going to war? It doesn't need to. All it needs to do is march 1 million people, its people, any of its people, they don't care who they are, march them over the Bering Straits and down the Alcan Highway, and they come with their buckets and spades and sit down in North America, which includes Canada, and start digging, right? You
Hmm.
mentioned that you were raised as a Mormon, right?
Yes.
You remember the Mormon history. They came over from Europe, they went to Utah, they had a problem. They marched north until they got into Canada. And as soon as it started to get too cold for them, they stopped there. And they're all across Highway 5. They're all big Mormon villages. My friend was a Levitt, and another friend is a Beezer. These are all right across Highway 5 across Canada, Mormon settlements from 150 years ago. Well, the Chinese will do just the same, only they'll be coming south. And as soon as it gets warm enough for them, they'll sit down and start planting their food. What are you going to do? If they send 1 million Chinese over just to sit down, we can't deal with a few thousand foreigners at our southern border. The president lets them in. So what are we going to do? Give amnesty to 1 million Chinese coming down the Alcan Highway? But that's what it will amount to. Uh, they will just come. I remember 40 years ago, my off planet friends telling me America will be invaded over its northern and its southern borders. Well, it's true. We're already getting invaded over the southern borders. And soon they'll be coming down over the north. So we're in an interesting time in history, and individuals, people, they better not be looking to the government or the extraterrestrials to start saving them, because nobody's going to save them. The government isn't competent. I mean, whatever we think of whatever government we have in power, they're certainly not competent. The only thing they seem to be able to do is take our money through the IRS and give it away to other people. So, uh, sorry, do you need to
No,
go?
sorry. No, no, no. I'm good. You're good. I'm so sorry. I was just.
Oh, so it's There's nothing they can do. I was surprised when I came to America that I found that and was learning how the system worked. And somebody told me, well, then on April the 15th, you have to do your taxes and your IRS. And because I was self-employed, of course, I paid my taxes. I didn't have any workplace taking tax money off me. I had to do my own tax returns and decide what I needed to give the government. Right? Uh, and so I didn't understand about this tax where it's income tax, where the corporation you work for takes the money off you and gives it to the government. And then everybody goes whoopee when they get their refund, as if this is a big favor to them. The government had that money all that time and it wasn't entitled to it. You think you'd be mad and say, why have you been holding my money all that time? But more than that, I found that Americans generally did not even know that the regulations for income tax have never been ratified by the required number of states. Collecting income tax is actually illegal in America. The IRS has no legal right to do it because I think it's
But if you try to detax, and I speak out of going through what happened with my grandparents many moons ago. They got an attorney and tried to get out of the working with the IRS. And I mean, it was horrible. It was catastrophic. They did all kinds of things. So I mean, yeah, we say that it's illegal, but when you try to go against it, it's a major problem.
well, you know what people don't also seem to realize. If you think about it, when you do your IRS returns, your tax returns, then right at the bottom, you sign a little paper, a piece at the bottom that says, this is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God, right? Pretty much. You sign that at the bottom of your tax returns. Everybody does, right? Well, I did for a while. For many years, I did. And then I realized that, in fact, they don't put you in jail for non-payment of taxes. They don't put you in jail for not even doing a return. There is no legal obligation to do a return, right? What there is a legal obligation in all their papers to tell the truth. And as their book of taxes has about 50,000 different rules and regulations that nobody knows, right? Then everybody can be found out to have not told the truth about something, right? There's some little thing that they're going to get you on. And that's what they can put you to jail on. And that's how they say, so now you owe us these millions of dollars of taxes or whatever. Um, and it really isn't true. People try to stand up, but filing a tax return, knowing that you owe $1,000 and then not paying it, that's against the law. But never filing the tax return in the first place is not against the law. It's, if nobody filed, something like 30 million Americans every year never do file.
Well, until all of the sudden the government wised up and said, "Oh, we're
Yep.
going to give free money for during COVID." So
These people don't file. My husband, I don't think ever filed. But he filed business taxes, but he never filed a personal return. To the best of my knowledge, he never ever did. You don't have to. Right? They'll probably come and put me in jail now for saying this. You don't.
don't come to me.
I wrote to the IRS years ago and told them, I said, I'm too poor to keep paying somebody to do my taxes for me. And I don't think I owe you any money, so I'm not going to file again. And they wrote back to me. And I was going to say I have that letter somewhere. I don't, because it burned. But I did have a letter from them. And it said, well, that's fine. Thank you very much for letting us know you won't be filing. If your circumstances change and you decide to file in the future, let us know. And that's what they told me.
Wow.
Oh, I,
My mouth is zipped. I'm not saying anything.
Be telling you all this, should I? Or else there'd be the IRS on the door, and it would be the people after me saying the things I was saying about Palestine the other day. They'll all be knocking on the door to take me out and shoot me. Or maybe they'll deport me. That's another thing that people don't realize. If you're an immigrant, if you become to America, like I was in my 40s when I came here, and I've been a citizen ever since I could do the test, But if you come here as an immigrant, people living here in Montana are Montanans. But I'm not a Montanan. I'm not a state anything because I belong to the government. And that's how they can deport you. You're not, because you weren't born in a state. You're just a US citizen, and the federal government can do what they like with you. People
Wow,
who've been, yeah,
that's
off,
dangerous.
they can do anything. They could send me to the salt mines for anything.
Hey, they do anything with anybody if they want to.
Anyway, what did you want to talk to me
I
about?
love it. I love it. Everything that you're talking about is just wonderful because really what you've been speaking on, I mean, food and money and business and survival, undertaking all your knowledge. I'm so honored that, to have you. I think it is, I'm picking into your mind. Keep telling me more. I love it.
Well, I can't really talk. My husband was the economist. He was all into the economy. So I don't really know much about economics. I do remember that a college professor from McGill University, way back in the 60s or 70s, came out with this huge thing. I think he wrote a book about it, that if everybody in the world worked 3 days a week, there'd be jobs for everybody. They could be high paying. They could all be high paying jobs for everybody. There'd be enough work for everybody, and everybody could have enough to live on. And I mean, he'd done all the global economics and worked it all out. I thought, yeah, well, that makes sense. Why don't they do that? And now I think there are some companies that started doing something of that kind. Mostly, I think the tech companies where people work on computers and can work at home, and they do what they call job sharing.
Yes,
There's some of them do job sharing, and I think that's a great thing, and I think it's a step in the right direction. Um,
absolutely.
but I also think that I'm not into collecting taxes of hardworking people and giving it away willy-nilly to other people anywhere that they feel like giving it. And I certainly resent some of the appeals for money all the time that are coming at us. But I do think that we have to have a better sense of equality of living, standard of living, that everybody in the world should have the ability to have clean water and
Yes,
enough food to live and the opportunity to work. Um, and that needs to be fair. There's no, you're never going to get justice in a court or legal system because clever lawyers are going to twist everything. But we do need to, I think, aim for some level of fairness in the world where there's everybody can have a fair chance at having a life.
well, you know what they say about justice, just us.
Yeah, that's good. I hadn't heard that one. That's a good one. Yeah, yes. Mm. I would like to see some fairness, though, and I would like to see some level of care for. I never in a million years would be a communist. Yes, in fact, I used to say when I was young, the one person I would never ever consider marrying was a communist because they are also atheists, and I'm not an atheist. I have to believe there's some ultimate intelligence behind the universe somewhere. Somebody has to know something, right? Uh,
Amen.
even if it's not me, that I'm assuming there's somebody out there who's got some smarts. So I could never be a communist. I could never be an atheist. But I think that we need some level of equality in the basics. I think that we need to educate the young. I think we need to take care of the sick and the old people like me. We have
Yeah,
to be taken care of. We need taking care of.
our angels,
Yeah. So those kinds of things, especially educating the young, because another of the things that struck me when I very first came to America, uh, my husband then had a friend that he worked with, and this man was very proud of the fact that he had 5 sons, and he sent them all to college. They'd all had a college education, got a degree. And I used to say to my husband, well, how come he had 5 equally smart kids? Are they all brilliant? Are they? Oh no, one of them was a shoe salesman or something, and another one's doing. 2 of them were pretty smart and went on to get, master's degrees, and the other 3 were basically just average kids. And that I could not and cannot understand why Americans are so obsessed with sending their kids to college. And that I think is the fact that they have this obsession is the big reason, the biggest reason of why we are seeing all these university protests going on now in campuses, decent universities like Columbia. I mean, great university, but look at what's happening. And it's going across, all these big Ivy League universities are having these protests and problems and issues. Well, they're not paying attention to their studies. Why? Because their parents told them they had to go to university and they weren't academic, right? They are not, they're not material for university. They should never have been sent there in the first place. And all they do when they get there is make trouble. Right? One way or another, they make trouble. They do drugs, they do drinking, they have protests, they have parties all the time. Very
when
few of
you when
you
you
see
think about it, it's our education system, right? I mean, I
this.
will definitely 100% speak on that.
Yes,
Because how do we send our kids in America to school for 13 years? 13 years we send our kids to school 5 days a week. And yet when the kids come out, they don't when they graduate high school, they can't balance a checkbook. They don't
right.
know about funding. They don't know about an LLC. They don't know about a C corp, an S corp, how to invest, do any of these things, but yet we've sent our children to this place and they
To
haven't
get,
taught them anything.
to get brainwashed. They've been
Exactly. Exactly. So then we expect, what is going to happen? All of a sudden, you're going to have an aha moment at 18 when you go to college? No. I mean, it's your first chance of freedom. It's your first chance out of the house, and really colleges, when you look at it, now our kids go without having the information that they need. And now they come out, if they do make it, 40, 100, $200,000 in debt with a rope around their neck.
so we're back to this materialism again. We're back to the money again, and that of course is really in America, as far as I can see, what determines your whole position in life, your class, if you like, is to do with money. It's not to do with education or breeding or qualifications or abilities or talents. It's just to do with money. Uh,
Everything.
if you've got enough money, you can buy the presidency. That's about what it amounts to. The biggest
Really.
in the land, you can buy it if you've enough millions or billions or whatever. And so that's just basically what has in the past and still does run things in America, except that is no longer available for most people. Most people are not going to be new, Microsoft, Bill Gates type people. Most people are not going to make the millions and the billions that they were making in Silicon Valley and with first it was the high industry after World War II, and then it was Silicon Valley. But those things they're not they're not doing it for the middle class of people anymore. There's their opportunity to create real wealth for themselves. And so they're now into this portfolio thing, trying to get into the stock market, doing, but they're gambling. They've turned into a nation of gamblers, hoping that they will get something out of it, because the real opportunities are not there anymore. Those, you might say, those places have been taken. They're all in the hands of a few greedy few, and they're not going to let go of it. Like well, Bill Gates is another monster, like Fauci. They're, quite honestly, in my book, these are evil people. And this is the evil of our times, that a very few people control vast wealth, unimaginable wealth, which is totally, totally unnecessary. And while people are starving to death all over the world, including people in America who are, like the Appalachians, you see in their great poverty, true need. And yet you have somebody like Bill Gates, who's a billionaire. Who needs to be a billionaire? A normal person. A corporation needs to have billions of money to build factories, but they don't do that. They just, and then they're deciding they'll be philanthropists. And so they are deciding who will have and who won't. And that's in a very few hands in the world today, not just in America, but in the world. Who controls the wealth is that 300 or 400 families that get together in Switzerland every year and have a big meeting, and they all come together in a little group, and they will decide who will survive and who won't. Essentially, who they will let starve to death and who they will feed. That's really what it amounts to. And
Do you think that there is an opportunity to change? Do you think that anything can be done about that?
well, it is true that there has been, in the last 30 years, 20 or 30 years, an awakening of awareness and an effort by a lot of people to raise their consciousness level, so that they are becoming more aware. But the sad reality of this is that when people become aware, it's usually because they're the oddities of society, like me, for instance, who am a clairvoyant, right? If they develop that level of awareness, then they are usually not the wealthy people. The wealthy people are not going to even think they should be aware of anything except themselves. Most wealthy, incredibly wealthy people I'm talking about, truly wealthy people, are so turned in on themselves, so concerned with themselves, that even when they do something that might benefit the public in some way, they do it so they can have their name out there, so they can have their name on a building or a rocket ship or whatever it is they're putting their billions into. It's not actually offering any level of fairness or sharing for the vast majority of people. So can it be turned around? It could, but you'd have to have a much larger, you have to have a massive consciousness. There
But
has to.
what do you think that, what about Mackenzie Scott? I mean, look at what all she does, and she's got the power to be able to really make a difference. So
Who?
maybe Mackenzie Scott,
I
Jeff
don't
Bezos.
know about her.
Yeah, okay. Okay. And she donates tons and tons of money, yearly. I think the last thing I looked at was like last year she might have, I think it was like 834 million.
Yeah, and that's good. But it's a drop in the bucket for what it needs. What it needs is more than 50% of the world's population to start thinking right. Right.
But we
And
have to show them, right? Like someone has to be the example. Like everything starts somewhere with
yes, but it
someone.
didn't go fast enough to handle 9 billion people. We've got to have 4.5 billion people or better thinking right. And in reality, the actual consciousness level, when we say yes, there's been a huge uptick in consciousness.
Thank
But
God.
I'll tell you what. I mean, if you want to know, this is what's going on. But if you want to know what's going to happen, right? I'll tell you what's going to happen.
Let's
It, it
go.
was it was first. There's something very special about Earth itself and the human race on Earth. Very special because it's a unique planet in the entire universe. Russell will never agree with me on this because he does, but he doesn't really know, right? We're unique, we're unique on this planet because we communicate by speech, not telepathy. Most of the evolved extraterrestrial beings, most of what we would call aliens, on other planetary systems that are highly developed, use telepathy as a means of communication. And of course, once you start using telepathy, then you're wide open to what everybody else is thinking most of the time. And so you were always trying to do your best because you don't want people to know what rotten things you're thinking, right?
Love it.
Earth is unique because we don't use telepathy as a general rule, we use speech. And this gives the soul entity of every human being a unique opportunity to make free choices. We are not every choice we can make freely because nobody knows what we're really thinking, right? We can say something nice, we can be thinking what we like. So our choices are hidden and therefore they are completely free. And that is unique in the universe, right? It's a great rarity. So what's going to happen is that there are enough people now making right choices because everything about life is making a choice. So there are
Absolutely.
enough people now making right choices, even if we don't realize they are. There's maybe no 20 or 30%. It was hoped there would be 40% minimum to change the whole history of humanity. They said if we can get 40% change, that will be enough. Well, it actually was less than 20% last time it was looked at. So we're not anywhere near changing it. And we're moving into chaos right now as a planetary thing. So we're not near enough that tipping point to completely change things. But there are enough people individually who are changing so that as this chaos comes, they will emerge out of it into something quite enlightened, into a different kind of frequency where life will be better, will be fairer. Unfortunately, and this is like the biblical sheep sorting the sheep from the goats, unfortunately, the goats get left behind. And left behind will be that at that point, nothing but goats, no real race consciousness among the lot of them. And they will have lost much of power. Power. I'm talking about power in energy form, like electricity and so on and so forth. Most of that will be lost through the chaos that's coming over the next 2 or 3 years, and very likely we will have lost all computing power during that period of time. That's a high probability, maybe an 85% probability that will be lost, which will take those that are left, the poor goats that are left behind, just not even able to communicate with each other using all their electronic equipment. In other words, they'll be stuck. So it's going to take them a very, very long time to even get back to where they are now. So when you're asking me, is it possible to change this at this point? No, I have to say, no, it's not. It is going to change for the few, but not for everybody. The largest percentage are probably going to get left behind and in worse circumstances, a lot worse circumstances that they are in now.
Wow.
So
Wow.
that's not very cheerful, I know.
What happened to the love and to the understanding and to the compassion?
let me iterate to everybody that if you start to think right, if you start to do that which is right rather than that which is expedient, which is what all politicians, for example, do, and the politicians happen to hope, right? But if as an individual you start to try to do the right thing in your life for yourself, right? And every living soul knows right from wrong. There's nobody who doesn't know right from wrong. So if you try to keep doing the right thing rather than just the expedient thing to get by, then it will be worthwhile, because if you are making the effort, even if you haven't got it right yet, it's enough to put you in the sheep bucket instead of the goat bucket. It's enough for you when this cycle changes, which it will change in the next 2 or 3 years. By 26, the entire cycle of human history is changing. This is a cosmic event. It's not just here on Earth, it's species throughout the entire cosmos. Every few millennia, every few millions of years, the the universe itself re-energizes itself. It uses the mathematics of pi to expand its borders, and it puts more light into the universe. There's more creative energy flows from the source into the actual creation, and that allows for these changes to occur every few millennia. So we are coming up to one in 25, 26. And when it does, that's when you will see the biblical sorting of the sheep from the goats. And it is worth making the effort. It's never too late to make the effort. And
Never.
then it will be a lot better.
That is awesome.
But
That is so true. It's never too late. That's the biggest key is
never,
it's
it's
never too late.
never too late. It's never too late to try. But you have to be trying, you know. And so many people have given up. They say, well, either I'm satisfied with the way it is or I can't be bothered to do it. And
Wow.
to be
And
honest,
that is so true.
yes, it is. And so many people are sitting. I hear it obviously in people that I talk to. Well, they're waiting for the ships. I actually had an email from somebody the other day, and they said that some date in September they thought that the UFOs were going to come and pick them up and rescue them. It's like, you're crazy. Nobody's coming to rescue,
Serious?
you know,
They
because
really thought that?
yeah, they actually told me that. It's about energy. It's about the frequencies at which we exist. And this three-dimensional frequency level that we exist on here is pretty low down the totem pole. You can't get much lower, but you can, with very little effort, move yourself up into a little bit higher frequency where life will be much better for you, much better for everybody.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, that is wow. I love it. I tell everyone it all starts every day is what it starts with what you're thinking, you
Yeah,
know.
it does.
Everything
It's
starts with a thought.
absolutely
That's the
the
most powerful thing.
mind.
The
You
way
know,
that everything starts with a thought, but then a thought can be changed, and
well,
that's where the subconscious versus conscious comes into play.
our friend Russell, he was a minister. His father had a church, right? And so he has a lot of biblical references when you talk to him. And sometimes he will quote something, like
Charger.
people really know their Bible and they quote chapter and verse. Well, I'm no bibliophile, but I know the Bible because I was living through a lot of it. I remember my past. I remember my history. So um, that's not surprising to me at all. That that he would be quoting the Bible. But the one thing that I like when he says it is the thing that Christ said when he was here. Everything I can do, you can do, and more. And this is true of every human being on the planet, that everything that all the healing, all the teaching, everything that the one we knew as Jesus of Nazareth did, we can actually do ourselves. Everybody. There are no exceptions to this because every human being has their own soul and they can teach their own soul, their own self, how to live a balanced life. And that balance represents perfection. The whole, enlightenment thing is no magic. It's just about balance. And the start of balance is self-discipline. So we have
Absolutely.
to become self-disciplined. Once we are self-disciplined, then we are open to be enlightened, to bring ourselves into proper balance. And once we do that, everything that was appears, not because it wasn't just Christ that did those healings, there were other people throughout our history have been doing it, right? And we can do it ourselves. We can do it for ourselves, we can do it for other people. We just have to understand what we were being told. And we were not being told that somebody murdered another person and that because they were murdered and spilled their blood, that's going to be our automatic salvation, because that is absolutely not true, right? And that was not the purpose that Christ came for either. But maybe you'd rather I didn't get into that, as this is supposed to be a business show. But
Hey,
still,
this
you
is
know,
all about you. I'm just loving your thoughts.
well, Christ was a good businessman. I mean, he put his money in a purse and gave it to somebody to go ahead and make reservations for them overnight when they were going to visit a place, and hire donkeys to ride on and all. He was a good businessman and a great organizer, and he was a wonderful healer and an exceptional being. And he was, I want to say, a God, in that he had all the attributes of creativity, which marks out God, if you want to use that term, or the source, the creative source of the universe. So we have that capability as individual human souls, as fragments of the source. We have that capability. A really easy way to think of the creator is if you imagine a great big mirror and somebody throws that mirror on the ground and smashes it into a million little pieces, but you pick up the tiniest piece and you've got in it the same reflection of the source as you had in the whole thing to start with. Everybody carries that tiny divine spark of the source within them, and therefore we are all capable of knowing right from wrong and doing right. It's not that hard a concept to just, think of what you want to do. It's like when you were a kid and maybe there was somebody had left a packet of cigarettes in the house, and you were over six and you thought, oh, well, they won't notice if I take one. I mean, you knew you shouldn't do it, but you did it anyway, right? You exercised your God-given free will. Well, that's okay too. But as we grow and recognize right from wrong, we should try to do that which is right. And if we do, we will find that we are successful in everything we do, including in business. If you are honest and have integrity and treat people the way you would like to be treated, the golden rule, in other words, then you're going to be successful in your business as well.
I love that. The golden rule. I love that. There's a song that we always used to teach when I was growing up, and my kids too, and it's so true. You know,
Yes,
I'm a sucker for love, so I'm all about, loving and being kind and nurturing and giving and creating and
kindness among people is probably the biggest missing commodity that we
mm,
have, especially when you go into the big cities and they're so crowded and busy and rushing about and nobody has time for anybody. I mean, you go to New York and they practically knock you over in the street to push past you. It's this. I don't know if you like New York, but I went there once and
I know. I'm just going to be honest with you. I have two children there, and I would rather eat nails than go there because it's like I've been there a couple of times, and I remember very distinctly one time being there, and I thought I was going to get killed just for like smiling at someone. They were asking, "What is wrong with you? What are you looking at?" And I was just being nice. I mean, I don't know. In the South, we speak, we say hi, you know but yes, it is so different. Thank goodness I myself understand what works for me and what don't. And I choose to stay away from the places like that.
me, yeah, me. So I say I went
I
once.
want to be somewhere where people are, I mean, because for me, like, I love people. Like, I need people, like most people need oxygen. And I love giving and caring and being nurturing. Like, I love to help people. It is just any and everything for me. Helping people is like breathing. And I
Yeah,
don't even think about it, but I came from that. My mom's like that. My dad is like that. My family has always been just we're it's not even a thought. It just happens. Like we just grew up nurturing people. As a little kid, I remember so many times where people would come and have babies and we would make food for them and go. My mom was always taking us and we're babysitting and cleaning their house and just the simplest of things, but it matters. And
right.
in my mom's community where she lives now, that's what she does. Like you would think she works 24/7, even though she doesn't have a job. She's always picking up this person, taking them to the doctor, cleaning this person's house. You know, I mean, and she loves it. And everywhere we go, people love, love, love my mom. And what an honor to see that. Because you don't see that in life. You don't find
You
those
do,
kinds of people.
yeah. Well, it's funny because I was when I was saying speaking to you yesterday, and I said how I thought about people, right? But when I thought about it after I got off the phone with you, I thought, and so if that's really true, and I think it is, how come I spent my entire life doing jobs that are designed to help people? I mean, I was a registered nurse, so I nursed for half my life and in a third world country where things were pretty bad. You had nothing, and I certainly didn't get paid for it because it was volunteer work. So
Wow,
after, after,
volunteer. Now
after I
that,
did nursing, and I I don't know what it is, but you know how people tell you things. All my life, I'd be a little kid, well, not little, but maybe 10 or 11. And I'd be in the town looking in a shop window. And people would come and stand next to me and tell me all their problems. Just grown up people would come. And I remember that was sort of my recollection of my years when I was like 10 to 13. In those years, when I would go into town, didn't have any money to spend, but I would look in the shop windows. And I'd no sooner stop than somebody would come and start telling me all their troubles. And then they would wait for me to find the solution for them. And oh, yeah, of course, that was clairvoyant, so I could. I mean, I could always do that, but
what a blessing. See that, and you know what is so amazing is I love that. My sister said to me one time, oh, I would not want your life. Everybody calls you with a problem, and I'm honored. I look at it like there's billions of people in the world, and they're calling me.
yeah, yeah.
It's like, so again, it's all perception of things. You know what I mean? I love it. I'm like, call me. I want to try to help.
I'm more like, shut the phone off.
Not me. I'm like, oh, I want to help. I want to help. Oh, what is your problems? How can I help you? How can I make you feel good? Oh, I just want to hear. You need a hug. Let me rub your back.
I
I'm always telling people, touch heals. Understand the love language. Understanding how someone gives love and how they receive love is the understanding of their making. You can
yes.
really get into somebody and the way that they think and how they move and what they're motivated by when you study how they give and receive love.
I guess, because I've maybe been doing it too long, because you probably don't know this about me, but I was born clairvoyant. I don't know what it is to not be clairvoyant. I can't imagine living without that sense. Uh, I had ET contact my entire life. There was, I mean, even when I was in my cradle and could hardly talk, they would be talking to me. Right. So I've always had extraterrestrial dear friends, and I was born without loss of consciousness. I've had my conscious awareness of me, my soul self, if you like. I've known that person well. I knew it before I was even human. And the first time I had a day out coming to this planet was about 400,000 years ago. And before that, there was Lemuria and Atlantis. And I never have lost memory. It's, to me, talking about Lemuria, for example, which was Antarctica at the time. Antarctica didn't have ice on it, and it included, Lemuria included Antarctic. Talking about Lemuria and what the healing temples were doing down in Lemuria at the same time as Atlantis, right, is no different to me in my head than talking about the town I grew up in Yorkshire, in this lifetime. It's totally continuous to me.
That
It's
is amazing.
it's like I've been either alive on the planet or dead. I was alive as an Anunnaki. Well, before that, I wasn't even Anunnaki. Before Atlantis, I was something totally different in the universe. And then I got adopted, you might say, by the Anunnaki people. They took me in and had me reborn to them, so I would be a true Anunnaki by birth. And then my life went on from there, and I actually came to live on this planet this last time as Anunnaki about 14,500 years ago. It was right at the end of an ice age. And then, and before the flood. The flood was about 12,000 years ago, but this was about 14,500 years. The snows were still on the ground, but it was melting. And then about 4,500 years ago, I got killed off unintentionally. Well, it was my own fault, right? But I got killed off, and I was living in what is now Peru at the time. And I got put to death. And the way it was done was pretty horrific. I was killed and scattered my soul energy. People can't understand when you talk about the soul. They think it's a nothing. But actually, the energy of the soul that you bring into any particular lifetime is housed in hydrogen molecules. And the way I was put to death, my heart was torn out and thrown into the fire while it was still beating. And as you know, fire itself transforms, changes things, actually changed those hydrogen molecules, scattered them all to hell and gone. They were all everywhere. And so I had to stay on the planet when everybody else left. And that's about 4,500 years ago. And I've been doing the last 4,500 years regular reincarnational lives as a human, which I can still remember them, but I've done them as a normal human being because I had no other choice. This was the only, when you press the button and it tells you what options you've got. I couldn't go home. I couldn't go home because I had to stay. That was my option was, well, you either have to be a human being or just disintegrate slowly. But to have the job of collecting all those energetic pieces back. And it has taken me until this lifetime to collect the last of it. I've managed to finally do that. So this time I can hop on a ship and thumb a lift home. I'm standing back.
No more returning.
Spaceway with my thumb up, will you pick me up, please, and take me home? So,
no, you got to come back. We need you.
Well, it's going to be 300 or 400 years before They go around the back of the sun and out the other side, and then I can hop a lift home. So, but this 300 or 400 years is going to be about reestablishing uh, human life because of what's left behind by taking the remnant and assisting it to move forward. So I won't have to keep dying. I guess I'll have to die this time to get off the planet because, the police want a body and something to do with it. So I guess I'll have to die this time. But when I come back for the next 300 to 400 years, then I will be in a different kind of body, and I will not be dying again after this one because I've done that too many times. I'm fed up with it. It's not a nice thing that I don't mind being dead, but I don't like dying. It always associates for everybody. It's I'm hoping I could just go to sleep and not wake up one night. That would be, or if you can have a sudden heart attack and drop dead, that's great. But usually on this planet for humans, it involves diseases and suffering and pain. I'm not into it anymore. When you
No,
have
me either. I don't want to.
it's enough. It's enough. I'm,
I
s-
am
I'm
not into suffering at all. I don't
no.
like pain, belittling, demeaning, nothing to do with sorrow or pain.
Well, I have some dear friends who are in a convent, traditional nuns, and they, of course, they actually, to me, I think it's insane. They actually pray for suffering because it'll purify them. This is what nuns and monks do. They pray the Lord sends them suffering so that it will purify their soul. My experience with working as a clairvoyant with all the hundreds and maybe thousands of people I've met, talked to, and worked with over the years, and my own personal experience, is that when we are in pain and suffering, we give little or no attention to the spiritual life. It doesn't purify us or help us. It's just suffering, and we just wish it would go away. And arriving at that point of going on your knees like holy people do and say, "Oh, thank you, Lord, for sending me all this suffering. I'm so grateful for it," because that's what holy people do, right? Not me, holy people, right?
Mm-mm. If that's what it takes to be holy, I don't want to be holy.
To me, that's insanity, right? And
Insanity.
one thing I have been striving for all my life, and it's definitely always top of my agenda in any life, is how to alleviate the suffering of humanity.
Yes.
Uh, just they suffer so much, and right now it annoys me when I see all these things like people who eat too much and get fat, right? And they say, "Oh, well, you're not fat, you're obese, and it's a disease. It's a disease, right? Yeah,
You're not fat, you're big boned.
it's the disease of putting too much in your mouth, right? You only need to put in as much as the energy you're going to expend. See, people don't seem to relate the work they do with the amount of food they need to do it. And so they get excessively overweight. I mean, some people have problems, and there are certainly bigger people than others. So I'm small, some people are much bigger. I mean, I could very easily get fat if I kept putting food in my face. Anybody will. So I kind of have a resentment that there is so much genuine suffering. I mean, I actually in Indonesia, a poor man, I'll never forget him, never. He was only in his 40s, an Indonesian, and he had sarcoma in all his bones. And we amputated his leg without anesthetic, right? Because the anesthetic would have killed him, and his family wanted to keep him alive. And he was in but the man was in absolute agony. And the only thing to give him any relief was to just take the leg off, but that was not going to help very much. But just that level of, or another patient who walked through the jungle, he had a hernia the size of a football, and he's
Mm.
holding it up, and he'd had to trek through the jungle for almost 4 days to get to a hospital.
Mm.
because we had the only hospital in a province the size of Montana. So this is real suffering that people go through all over the planet, and especially in third world countries, and they go through it every day, and keep enduring it. And I don't understand how that can be ever considered a good thing. That there is any virtue. I have never ever seen any virtue in suffering. I
Mm-mm.
just don't get it. Physical pain and suffering, I would like to see obliterated. And
Absolutely.
I have always and will continue to work to that end because it's something I've always done. It's like thousands of years, that's my job. 10,000 years ago, I was a nurse. So it's like I've always been uh, in in that involved in that. And that is one reason why I would like at least some of these extraterrestrial beings to come to our planet, because the knowledge that some of them have is incredible when it comes to medicine and the healing arts. Even in the time of Lemuria, we could cure just about anything with nothing but sunlight. And you remember those? Have you ever
Food,
seen
food,
pictures
food,
of
food.
those rose windows in like the great Notre Dame cathedrals, like the one in Paris, the Notre Dame uh, on the aisles of City Isle in Paris? They have these huge, they call them rose windows, multicolored glass windows. And in the 1400s, or earlier than that, when they were building these cathedrals, the craftsmen had the art of melding pure gold with the colored glass. And that's what those rose windows are. That's why there's such a wonderful feeling when you go into those very few buildings left that have those kind of windows, because sometime after the Middle Ages, the art of melding gold with the colored glass was lost, and nobody's ever been able to do it. And apparently, some scientist about 2 years ago, somebody was just telling me last week, has finally believes he's got the art, has found out how to do it again. But when gold is incorruptible. That's the value of gold, is that it's completely incorruptible. And so when you meld the gold with the colored glass, and then you put pure sunlight, to full spectrum light from the sun through that glass, through with the gold in it, it cures the diseases. And this was known in Lemuria. This was with the great healing temples of in the time of Lemuria. They were octagonal buildings, and each side wall would have actually an opening in it, and then you had these plates of this gold and glass meld color, and you would put this over the patient. And it's quite specific. I mean, I remember, I've never forgotten the colors that you need. For example, for treating the lungs, for anybody with lung disease, you need the blue colored glass. Sometimes you need the blue green, but mostly just the blue. That's with the light through it. That's what cures cancers of the lungs, cures any lung disease. And this for the heart, you use the green or the red. It can be two colors because the heart is the organ and the blood going through it. So you use the two colors. And these different colors treat all these diseases. And it's fairly complex in getting the right frequency at the right time of day and so on, for the right angle of light coming through it. But it's simple in a way, because you don't have any nasty medicine or cutting people up or anything. You just heal them, you just cure them. Uh,
Wow, that is so amazing. I'm sitting over here flabbergasted because I was just at one of my girlfriend's house a couple weeks ago, and she has, I think it's called, and who knows, I could be totally pronouncing it wrong, but I think it's called the Solix. And that is exactly what you're talking about, is what the machine, it has these different glasses. It literally takes and scans your whole entire body, and it gives you like this, I mean, extensive um, information in reference to your body. And then you put these glasses on, and everything that you're talking about with the colors is correlates to what you just said. I'll have to get that information and just let you look at it, because that is wow.
Well, I know there's a lady, I mean, I don't know her, but I caught a blip of her on a program, like an interview program she was doing with somebody on YouTube, I think. And somebody sent me this clip. And this lady is a scientist, physicist, and her parents were physicists as well. And she has developed this machine, right, which again measures frequencies throughout the body. Every part of your body has its own specific frequency.
Yes.
Like planet Earth's frequency is 8.35, I think, something like that. So you have it. And if you could create the machine that could perfectly measure the frequency, let's say you had a bad liver, the frequency of your liver, and could also perfectly measure the frequency of the virus, for example, that was attacking your liver, then it could completely change that frequency so that you would be healed. In other words, frequency medicine is the medicine of the future, without doubt. And this lady who was on I think it was a YouTube thing that somebody sent me, she has developed a machine. So maybe it's the same one that your friend is talking about. And they have these med bed things now that they talk about that also measure your frequencies and diagnose your diseases. So I
I'm
don't.
still waiting for my appointment. I contacted them and sent them a message telling them I wanted to come and use the med bed, and they said they would get back to me, but I'm still waiting for an appointment and how to get there and wherever it is. Hope it's on this earth.
Yeah, I mean, it would be wonderful if they, because there's no reason why they can't mass produce those things. There's no, somebody said to me, "Oh, you can get an appointment on the med bed for $100,000." That's what they were paying out of Hollywood, was $100,000 for one of these appointments for treatment or whatever. But it's again just making money, because they don't cost that to make, right? Even if one of them costs them $100,000 to make, every treatment thereafterwards could be free, right? So what I want to see is free medicine that actually cures people, not experimental stuff like the pharmaceutical companies are doing. But our pharmaceutical companies are all run now by essentially the Fourth Reich. The people who left Germany at the end of World War II and went down to Antarctica and are still hiding there in the caverns under Antarctica and working with the reptilians, and have pretty much taken over all our industry. That's true. But they've also are in charge of most of our pharmaceutical corporations as well. So, we know most of it's experimental. And we're the guinea pigs.
We're the experiment.
Yeah, exactly. We are. We
We
are.
are the experiment.
And it's a failed experiment.
Uh-oh. Well, it's okay. We'll do better. You and I are here. We got this.
Yeah, we've got it. We've got it now.
With you and I on the case, we got Russ. We got a whole team of people.
Right.
When you know better, you do better.
That's right. That's true. Well, you know better. Why don't better?
Hopefully, when you know better, you do better. I say that all the time to my kids. Where much is given, honey, much is required.
Yes, I always say, to people who know me, then I say, well, when I get to the other side, I'm going to be in a whole heap of trouble, because they'll say to me like, oh, you'll be okay. Your friends on there. I said, no. I said, I'm in a whole heap of trouble. I said, I've always known so much about what was going on that there's no excuses for me. But
oh yeah, you never had an excuse. They're like, you knew. you know.
I need a lot of excuses. Now it's getting near the time. Now I'm getting really old, and it's like, oh gosh, now I'm going to be in trouble any minute now. Mm.
No, no, you're not old. You're just beginning, girl.
Oh, no. I hope.
When I was on with you yesterday, I'm like, she is she's amazing. She's phenomenal. Like, oh my gosh.
uh, I
It's
think you got
amazing.
the wrong person there. I think
No, girl, not at all. No way. I'm so honored. I'm like, I'm gonna hug Russ's neck off. I'm so thankful that he's like, oh, you definitely want to talk to her. She is amazing. And I'm like, oh, what a treasure.
uh, no, Russ asks me all kinds of stuff, and I keep telling him, Russ, I only know about one thing, and that's the Anunnaki and their history with humanity. That's the only thing I know about. I don't know about anything else. But he asked me stuff, and we'll talk about that. I don't have a problem talking, but whether I actually know anything or not is
You're like, I mean, I can talk. Is it accurate? I love it. I love it. No, no, you actually know a lot about a lot. I'm so thankful. I mean, I'm so honored to have you on here and get to spend time with you and share, and be a part of your world and your thoughts and your knowledge. It's so powerful. So many people have so much to share and it's very valuable.
yes. There's a lot of people know a lot of things, and they don't want to share about it. They want to keep it to themselves, and we don't own. No, I don't own any of the things I know. I only know what I know because the guys upstairs have told me, right? All my off-planet friends have told me, or what I remember myself, of course, what my own memory banks hold. They're mostly stuff full of nonsense, I think, rubbish. But uh, between the two, there's maybe a lot of information in there. But if there is, it's not my information. It's the universe owns the information, not me. I don't own, and I don't claim to own any of it. Um, I don't. Well, even when I wrote a little book for the students, I didn't copyright it because I don't consider that I own it. It was me, yes, I wrote it, but I think probably when George published it, he did a copyright thing, which lapsed years ago, I'm sure. Uh, but when I wrote things, I never copyrighted them. I never thought that I owned anything. That it's
I
all
love I love the whole cliche sharing is caring because honestly and truthfully, I really believe that. You
yeah.
know, and when you know something, if you hold it in, only you get to benefit from it.
Right.
But if you share it, now
Yeah.
the world gets to benefit from it.
I mean, some things I claim I own. For instance, I I claim that I own myself. Right? I own me. That's why I was so miffed with Russ having that other person on speaking, and it sounds as if it must be me speaking, and it's not, right? It should have said this, whoever it was. I don't know who it was, but it should have said whoever it was. But it certainly wasn't me. Um, so I think I own me, but maybe I don't even own me because there is this concept of um, an avatar having many aspects on the planet, and those aspects all are when put together, they're like jigsaws, and when it comes together, it's the one being the one avatar. Um, and there are most most religious will tell you that the soul cannot be fragmented. But that's not true. And I know that's not true because when you're on the other side and you're in charge of your own soul, You decide how much of that soul's energy you want to accompany you into the lifetime that you're moving into. You only take as much as you're going to need for that life. You don't generally take all of it because you've had many lives and you've acquired a great deal of information, and that's usually left floating out there in the ethers, so to speak. This is why people instinctively know how to do things. They've been maybe a school teacher in this life, but when some kid falls and breaks their leg, they instantly know what to do. And it's because in a previous life, they had medical training. So that memory of our soul's learning is always out there, but we don't bring the knowledge of it directly into the life that we're experiencing now, unless we feel it necessary. So yes, the soul can be fragmented, and only small parts of it used. And some of the great beings of the universe will have as many as half a dozen, or even as many as 9 or 10. There really is no limit to the number of actual entities experiencing on the planet on their behalf. So when those entities leave their natural life and die and go back to the other side, they will accrue back to that one individual who that energy actually belongs to. Am I making sense to you?
Absolutely.
Uh,
Absolutely.
because most theological people who discuss theology would not agree with that. They say, no, you cannot divide, but you can. I know you can. Um, and I also know, for me, that I am me in this lifetime. At the moment, I'm the best I can be. I'm the totality of myself, good, bad, or indifferent. In this lifetime, I am the totality of myself. When I die, um, I will still be the same me, um, on the other side. Funnily enough, I've had the same name for thousands of years as well. Or some variation of it. I've been, Julia, Julian, Juliana, all variations. I haven't actually changed my name since I was born to the Anunnaki, and my name is actually Gil Lee Ann. If you divides into three, Gil Lee Ann, um, and that in Anunnaki it means something like fiery messenger or fiery rocket of God, fiery messenger or fiery rocket of God, and being the old ruler of the Anunnaki planet, which humans refer to as God. You know, I mean, the God in the Bible is not he's not the creator. When it tells you in the Bible, it's the gods are walking in the garden and conversing with one another, right? And it tells you that, yeah, they're having a chat with one another. Well, that's Enki, the Enki and the Enlil. That's the commander of the earth and the overall chieftain. Uh, they were running things at the time. And what it tells you in those stories about the Elohim. Elohim is plural for El. They're all El. If you think of the names of them, there's like Uriel, Raphael, Michael, all the different names of the angelic beings. They all end in El because the El actually goes in front and means Lord, right? So it's Lord Rafe, Lord Micah, Lord Uriel, whoever, right? And they were plural. Tells you that in the Bible, that they were walking together in the gardens conversing. And these are the Anunnaki who were on the planet at the time. They were living on this planet. And we actually, I mean, what the Bible tells you is most of the story is after the flood. The history they write about comes after the flood, but they still do the Genesis book. But Genesis in the Bible is a condensed version. I call it the Reader's Digest version of the Enuma Elish, which was the Sumerian creation story, and it goes back even before that. long before that. There are many stories, but the Genesis story of creation is actually pretty accurate description of what the Anunnaki first did when they first came to the planet hundreds of thousands of years ago, long before anybody thought about writing a Bible. And that was the first job they did. First, they did a sea landing, and that's why the Enki is often in mythology, he looks like a fish, right? Because he came out of the ocean. You know, Poseidon, the Roman god Poseidon, was the Enki because they did an ocean landing, just like we did a space landing. We landed in the ocean and got rescued, right? They landed in the ocean and they came out of the ocean, and then the first thing Enki did was divide the water from the land. You know, he dug ditches. He used a backhoe and like a backhoe and dug huge ditches to raise up dry land and separate the oceans from the land, just like it tells you in the Bible. But it wasn't the creator of all things that did it. It was not the creator of the universe. It was Enki. It was his job to do that. So this is, it's very pragmatic, right? It really is. You need to read it and believe exactly what it's telling you. It's not telling you about the creator and about in the beginning. The beginning was when they separated the water from the land, when they built an encampment. And the first time I came here was on a day trip. I came on a day trip 400,000 years ago, and that was down into Africa, where we were looking for a place to build the laboratories that we used to start the genetic engineering with. I remember that day out like yesterday. It was lovely. I had a lovely day out.
That is amazing.
It's a beautiful place. What is amazing to me is that we're standing there and the grass was like 2 feet high and it was brownish, golden brown, like I imagine a pampas would be, right? All this huge plain. And behind us there was this great big massive waterfall, beautiful. And we were saying, okay, so far from here this is where we're thinking of building, right? And this snake came by and it was huge. It must have been 20 feet long. And it was a big fat snake like this. And it was all multicolored. Now, I have a horror of snakes. Even a garden snake, I would die for, right? I cannot abide snakes at all in this life, right? I'm truly afraid of things. Oh, right. But on that particular day, I remember bending down and picking this thing up with my hands like this and letting it slide over both my hands. And as I was saying, look at this, David, look at this. Isn't it beautiful? I said, it feels like silk. And,
Mm.
and I and I let it go over my hands and drop down into the grass again. I'll never forget that sensation of that snake, this big fat snake just swooshing over my hands. And I
Woof.
was all afraid.
You were not
But
afraid at all?
but not then I wasn't, no. But then that's the advantage of having that particular kind of body. It's not like a human body. It doesn't get damaged. Humans are very fragile. We break very easily. And it wasn't until I actually came to live on Earth, which is about 14 and 15,000 years ago. Um, and after I'd been here a few months, I had to go in the box. And it's like an octagonal, it was wood, made of wood. They built it from wood, but it had these glass panels all the way around. Same principle we were talking about Lemuria, except all these panels were cream, white, going through to a blood orange color, all white, cream, yellow, orange, blood orange, almost to red. That was the range of color. And you had to lie on this bench, and the technician laid you on the bench, and then it took about 3 hours, the process. And it was like a densification process to really put density into your bones. The problem we had, all the Anunnaki had when we first came to Earth, was bone fractures, a lot of broken bones, and there were heart problems as well because of the changing gravity. The gravity on the
Wow.
home planet is about like the moon, it's about 1/6 of what it is here. So when we came here, there were a lot of accidents and a lot of bone fractures. So we had to go through this process. And I can remember that day like yesterday because when the technician came back and said, "Okay, you can get down now," and I jumped off this table and it felt as if I put, I don't know if you've ever done it, but if you've ever been swimming and then you try to get back into your wet swimming suit, you
Oof.
know, to pull on a wet swimsuit and it just feels, oh, yuck, and just weighs
Or
it. That's what exactly what it felt like, as if I'd put on a sopping wet woolly swimsuit that was just taggy. It was a horrible, horrible feeling. Horrible. But it enabled us to stay on this planet without trouble, or without unreasonable trouble. Mm.
wow, that does not sound enticing at all. A wet swimsuit. It's a lot of work.
That was, but when you were in your own body, it was still your Anunnaki body, even though it had to go through this densification process. Anything that went wrong with you was very easily fixed. The medicine was phenomenal, and you never really worried about.
Medicine. Can we get that? Can we tap into that? Can you ask some of your friends to bring that? I need that for my neck.
Uh, yeah, you need a med bed. I need to lie on a med bed and whatever. Mm. When I
When Russ told me about the med beds, I don't care. I immediately emailed him. I'm like, look, I got connections. I got friends. What do I need to do to get to this bed?
At a med bed, yeah, I would love to go on one of those med beds and get everything fixed so things stop hurting you all the time and
Yes.
whatever. Mm.
It's amazing. I mean, I'm very thankful to understand that pain is a thought too, right? And that everything starts with the thought, right? So again, redirecting your thoughts. But
Yeah,
man, it would be great to not have to redirect those thoughts because they don't
yes,
exist anymore.
and it would be great to have that much control that
Absolutely.
you actually. Well, I find myself like, who was it? T.S. Lawrence, when he was in the desert, made that statement. When he puts his hand in the candle flame, and his Batman says to him something like, "Doesn't that hurt you, sir?" And he says back, "Yes, but the trick is not to mind the pain." I spent my life saying that to me. The trick is not to mind the pain. The trick is not to mind
Yes.
the, you know.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I literally, coming from all the injuries that I've had, and, C7 is completely replaced in my neck, and C3 is fractured, and, L3, L4, just with all of that, it's like people say, how are you so happy? I'm like, it's a
That's like the state of your spine sounds like the state of mine. I
I'm
fell
like,
off
it's a decision.
when I was 64 and broke my back, and that took 2 years to heal up. And my spine's like yours; it's wrecked. Uh, but I've been lucky in that, touch wood, I don't have a lot of diseases. When
Yes.
people get to my age, they have things like diabetes and heart disease and stuff like that. I mean, I've got neuropathy in both my feet and legs, but that's from spinal injury. Everything that's wrong with me has been from accidents or injuries,
Yep.
right? So
Me too.
that's that you don't have an actual diseases. So
Exactly.
yeah,
But
and
that was because we were mindful. I mean, I can say for myself, it was from being mindful and watching what I put in my body, understanding that this body is a glove,
yeah,
and this glove, right now, from what we understand, you get out of it what you put into it. So
Yes,
you understand that aspect of things, you look at food differently, you look at every aspect of it differently, because I need it and want it and desire it to maintain at the level that I want it to.
exactly. You're just like me. I've all my life I expected my body to do what I required of it at the time I required it. I
Absolutely.
didn't. It never occurred to me that it couldn't do things. But
Me neither.
actually, that's what's caused me most of the problem, because I'm only 5'1.5", right? And I'm small boned, so I've always been small, and I've always done things that were really outside my physical capability. Picking up 400-pound patients, when I weighed 100 pounds, right? This is not reasonable, and so that's how I've damaged myself. Most of the damage I've done over the years was because I was doing things, either things that I shouldn't, or things that were just too hard for me. I just physically didn't have the realistic capability of doing it, but I expected my body to do it. Well, it kind of got fed up with that. Now it's just hanging in there, I think.
I think it's doing good. Seems to be doing great. I'm telling you, I love it. I'm literally.
with, neur- with neuropathy, driving gets very interesting because you can't feel your feet. So you
Yes.
feel the pedals. No,
Yes.
it's a
It's
bit.
funny that you mentioned that, because I have a lot of those same things. That's what you're talking about, and that's why I love studying, all these alternative medicines, and going, I travel all around, going to different events, medical events, to find this new technology, and always understanding that life is what we think it is, and so I'm like, oh, well, I'm just going to find it.
Yeah.
They're like, how do you do it? I'm like, I don't give it. I don't give no an option. It's a yes or yes world.
Well, I agree with you. The Languedoc.
Exactly. I'm like, they're like, well, what are you doing? I'm like, I mean, I'm just gonna find it. It's just creating what I want, not giving no an option. I'd say all the time, you're not asking the wrong question, just the wrong person. Keep
Right.
asking.
I
Keep
always have,
searching.
I always have this thing. I've had it for years that I would love to go to the south of France to visit the Languedoc region, because that means the language of yes.
Really?
Yeah, Languedoc is language of yes. Oc is the old French for yes.
I'm gonna,
So
I'm gonna
that's
look into
and
that. That's
and
absolutely fabulous.
the people who live there are the remnants of the Cathars. And the Cathars, that's why they were persecuted so badly, because they had the language of yes, which actually meant in their time they had the language of creativity. They knew they knew what you had to do to create things, to actually manifest what they needed in their lives. This is why they got persecuted in the first place. And there are still, if you look it up on the computer, there are still enclaves of the Cathars practicing the old religion. And I've often thought I would love to go there and just talk to those people and find out how they've kept it going all these years. And it'd be really fascinating, I
We
think.
need to go. You and I, girl. We got this. We need
Yeah,
to go.
that
We gotta.
that language fascinates me. The language of yes,
Yes,
yes, yeah,
absolutely. Right. Because again, everything starts with a thought.
right.
And why not? I mean, when someone says, well, how are you so positive? Or how do you think? I'm like, what's the contrary?
You might
Why?
as well. I always say, well, you might as well be. One of the residents here said to me the other week, she said, how, she was asking me how I doing, because I had a bit of an accident just over a year ago, and I've been in a lot of pain ever since, and it just started to get better about 3 weeks ago, thank goodness. But she saw me and she asked me what had happened, because generally, I don't believe in speaking about your ailments, but she specifically had asked me, and so I told her what had happened to me and what it had done to me. And she said, but you're always smiling and you always look so happy. But she said, you never come to the dining room and eat with us, do you? I said, well, no, that's because I couldn't sit that long at dinner. You know, I'd be holding my head or holding some part of me. I got
You're like,
exactly. Oh my God, I can't do this. So I get my food, I bring it back to my own place. But she did remark, oh, you're always smiling. Well, I think it's our duty to smile at other people. I like this morning for you to do this because I really don't like being on the picture of me. But to do this, I actually, put some lipstick on, and I never do makeup. I never do it. I put some bit of mascara on, I put some bit of rouge and a bit of lipstick on to kind of look a bit better because somebody else is having to look at me, right? So so I always stay by myself and don't do any of that stuff because nobody's having to look at me. I always think that we have to try and look our best if other people are having to look at us. You know, they don't want you to just be looking at your ugly old self. You have to be as nice as you can, right? And as I'm no
well,
beauty to
when you look better, you feel better too. You know what I mean? It's conscious. You can't when you dress a certain way, right? And you look a certain way, you feel a certain way.
I guess you do, maybe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know.
But I've never cared about that. I've never cared about clothes or makeup or stuff. Never.
Well, me
Not.
neither. I don't know how to do all those things, but I think
Well,
maybe it's just
but
internal.
yes, I agree with you. You do feel better. I feel better if I get bathed and put clean clothes on and take a walk
Yes,
outside.
that's what
Um,
I'm saying. I don't mean like when I say that, I don't mean like I don't have to drive a Bugatti and I don't have to, wear red bottom shoes and, I don't have to do those kind of things to feel good, but just taking the time to invest in me, getting dressed, feeling good and taking time for me is what I
yeah,
mean by that. I definitely don't know how to do makeup, but
I take all my time to read. I just, oh, now I'm getting stabbed in the eye. And the doctor gets mad at me. He says, I am not stabbing you in the eyes, I am injecting you. I say, yeah, you're stabbing me in the eyes. That's what you do. That's a strange sensation, getting stabbed in your eyes. They
I
do.
can't even imagine, but if that's what I would have to do to read, I would do it. I would do it because I am obsessed with reading. I read a book a week.
Yeah. Well, I read more than that. And now I do because they told me I had, when I went to get a pair of reading glasses, they told me I had, what do they call it? Macular degeneration
Oh,
in one eye, right? And I
uh-huh.
had these injections in my eye. Okay, so I did that for 3 or 4 months. And then he said, oh, I'm sorry to tell you, it's developed in the other eye as well. Now, he said that often happens, it develops in both eyes. So I said, no. So I said to him, well, how often do I have to have these injections in my eyes? He said, well, every 6 weeks, forever. He said it's going to slow the process, hopefully, and preserve your sight so you can see. And so I had cataract. I said, well, if I have I got cataracts? He said, well, not bad. I said, well, change those out, get those out, and then I'll be able to see to read without glasses. He said, yes, you would be able to see to read. So I got that done, and now I can read like crazy. So I not joined particularly, but started going to that thrift books online
Hmm.
because
Hmm.
they get every kind of book you can think of. And I'm spending far more money than I've ever spent on anything on myself.
Okay, so I
I
have the best answer. The best answer. You know what you do? You
yeah,
go to the library and you get a library card, and there's an app online called Libby. And with your library card, every book you want, you get it for free. You get the book version and the audio version. And if the library doesn't have it, you call them and it's called an interlibrary loan. They literally will find the book and send it to you.
I know they do that. I used to volunteer at our library in Twin Bridges and get books of people, but you have to go to the library to do it, right?
Well, no,
Uh,
they'll send it to you too. If you have an account.
no, I don't know. Not to this town library. I do to where I used to live before. I belong to the library there, but I never joined here because, well, I just haven't done it. And I haven't done it partly because mostly the books I get, I want to keep because I want to go back into them. They're not reading and throwing away books, they're reading and keeping books. And unfortunately, what I didn't have here in the retirement home that I moved into last year, I'm talking about books and furniture and things, what I didn't have here, but out of mine, out of my library, my furniture, my clothing, my bedding, all the stuff that I didn't have right here was stored in my friend's house. She kindly emptied her garage and stored it for me. And then in November, her house burned down and everything burned. I didn't even have any clothes except the suitcase I brought here with me. She lost her house, but I lost everything else that I owned. You know,
I hope
it,
she had homeowners insurance at
well,
least.
she has insurance, thank
Well, did
goodness. And
you get your
they're
stuff
starting to build her house again for her, but she lost everything. The whole house went. But I lost everything I had as well.
Well,
Because,
is she getting your stuff replaced for you since she had the insurance there?
well, I think she had a list of my stuff. And I think if she gets paid, they haven't paid her out on the insurance yet. What they've done is contracts with her contractor, and they're paying the contractor as he does it. But on her contents insurance, she hasn't got anything from them yet. They haven't finalized that. It was only November. Yes, right before Christmas, the house burned down. Oh, it's a
Wow.
shame.
Well, you know what? That's so sad, but at least what a blessing that she had insurance, because you can look at the negative or you can look at the positive, right? And the positive is it's rebuilding, it's going to be replaced, and it'll be even better. You
Oh,
know,
yeah, it's getting a brand new house out of it, which is good.
absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely.
and
Everything has a good and a bad. It's all about what you focus on.
well, I was not complaining because yes, sure, I didn't have anything left, including I didn't even have any winter bedding from the bed or winter clothes. I didn't have anything, coats, or everything gone.
My
Right. But
gosh.
the other side is that I don't have to sort it all. However, the one thing I do miss are my books. So I keep buying them back. But
I'm like, I love to read, but man, I am a minimalist. I have so many things going on in my mind, right? Like I'm learning and I love to learn and all of that, but my environment, I need a clutter-free environment. That's why I love the library because I can get a book I have library cards at multiple different places in multiple different counties. So if one library don't have it, another one will because I just can't stand a bunch of stuff around me.
no, I'm just filling my bookcases up. I'm in one tiny place and I have three bookcases in it with me. There's more bookcases than anything else. The only thing I've ever treasured in my life, ever, were my books, and they were nearly all gone. I just
Ugh,
have a. I tell you one though. Have you read Dr. Michael Salla?
mm-mm.
Salla. Salla.
I'm gonna look
Michael.
right now. And what's the name of his book? Because I'm gonna get it.
Well, he's written a lot of books, but my favorite is The Secret History of Antarctica.
I'm gonna look it up right now while we're
That's
on here.
the second or third book, but the whole thing, that's a trilogy. But that's my favorite one, and they will stand alone. You can read them as standalone books.
Uh
But
huh.
I think you would love that, and it is so informative.
What is it called again? The Secret.
The Secret History of Antarctica. And another of my favorite books that I've just reread for the third time is Catherine the Great. I love the books, the biographies of Catherine the Great.
Oh, I'm gonna get that one too. I
Oh,
love it. Keep sharing.
yeah, by a man called Massey, Mass. I think it's EY, but it's Massey anyway. The biography of, I mean, there are lots of biographies of, but his is, I think, the best. And as I say, I've just finished reading it for the third time. I never get tired of that book.
The biography of Catherine the Great.
Yeah,
I'm getting all this. Keep
I
dropping
mean,
gems, girl.
that's the book that every woman should read because, boy, what she did was phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. And yet she was also a pretty wild character. I mean, she murdered her husband. She had several lovers through her lifetime. I think the next czar was the child of one of her lovers, not the other czar's child. She's just this phenomenal woman. She kept up a correspondence. She corresponded with people like Rousseau and Diderot and all the great French free thinkers of the time before the French Revolution. You know, her mind was incredible. And that book is really, really well written. It's
Mm,
well worth reading.
I'm
Through,
definitely going to get that. I love it. I
yeah,
already love it because you're just telling me about it. I am like addicted to people that love knowledge.
yeah, that's she was so clever, so brilliant, brilliant woman. I mean, she just ran the whole of Russia, which was a huge empire at that time, and no communication, no telephones, none of that stuff to do it with. She just did it as the Tsarina of Russia. She was, I guess, to me, she's one of the most incredible women in history because she didn't just do one thing, she did so many things, was so brilliant in everything that she did.
That is so good. So many people try to tell you, just do one thing, just do one thing, one thing, one thing. I'm like, I
How
don't
to
know
do,
how.
do everything.
I'm like, what? 14 kids? I'm doing 50,000 things. I'm a jack of all trade, master of none.
I think it is men who tell you to do one thing because men are
Mm,
blinkered. They are only capable of doing one thing at a time. They learn one job, one career, one thing, and they do that all their lives. I remember a dear friend of mine who was a clairvoyant in Yorkshire. Brilliant, she was, absolutely brilliant. And I knew this gentleman who was a civil engineer and specialized in highways and bridges. And I was talking to her about him one day, and she said, "Oh, she said, I wouldn't hook up with him at all. I wouldn't have, you don't waste your time on him." And I said, "Well, he's very nice." And she said, "No, no." She said, "Let me tell you about him." She said, "When he dies, he will be building highways in heaven. It's the only thing he'll ever know what to do is build." She said, "He'll drive you stupid. You'll be so bored with him, he'll drive you crazy." But I have found generally that most men only can do, not are not willing to try, but can only are only capable of doing one thing or one kind of thing. They have to specialize it, so it seems. And I think it's just the way they're made. The biochemistry that makes them male only allows them to focus on one thing, like go out and kill the animal and bring it home for supper. That's your job and that's all you have to do. Whereas women by nature are multitaskers. They have kids, they cook the food, they look after the house, they earn the money. Remember that advert that used to be for, I forget what for, but it was this woman who would come in the door with a briefcase, and the advert was she was bringing home the bacon. Do you remember that? I forgot what it was for. It was way back in this, maybe the 80s. But she was out of business and she was coming home and, she's bringing home the bacon.
I'm telling you, thank God. I know I talk about it all the time. My perfect match is an AI,
Yes.
because I mean, why not?
Huh?
Because I'm never, I'm not satisfied sitting at home. I'm not satisfied. Like, it would be death to me to sit. I don't care if I have a trillion godzillion dollars. I'm not the person who rocks on the porch. I want to
No,
be doing things. I want to be helping people. I want to be contributing. I want to be doing this and that and this and that and this and that and this and that. It makes me feel alive.
And you know, you are so right to feel that way. The only thing that has concerned me at all about getting old, right, or older, right, is that I don't work anymore. I don't have a job. And all my life I'm used to people calling me. They would call me, say they would call me for readings. They would just call me to go do lectures or talks. I would be on the lecture circuit. My gosh, I even once went to the United Nations to speak to a group there of a group of people they have there, the heads of department. And that was about UFOs, interestingly enough. But you're
Well,
not.
we can do that again if you wanted to. If you wanted to, we could literally, just like this, just like we're doing right now, and we could put you on a platform of yours and just that way people can still call you. You can still, and you don't have to go anywhere.
No, I can't do it anymore. I've had
Oh,
so much damage to my spine. And the problem is that my head hurts so much that I can't focus. And I stopped doing actual readings to people when I was about 74. I was married to George, and I said, I have to stop doing this because in order to actually do a proper reading for somebody, you have to be able to focus and look at their eternal timeline, how they got to here, what's happening with them, and where it's taking them. And to do that, you have to open up to that timeline, which is opening up to the universe essentially. And there's so much garbage going on in the field of mass humanity at the moment on the planet, all the stuff that as soon as you open up, or this was how it was affecting me, I would do the reading, but by the time I'd finished, I would have terrible, terrible headaches, awful, that I really couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't hold the focus long enough because all that garbage would be coming tumbling into my consciousness, and it was just about killing me. Plus it meant that I could no longer really truly validate the accuracy of what I was saying,
uh,
because if you to me, if